Hey there, here we go with another one of our dates with Dax for 30 days. Every day I'm producing videos answering questions from the tribe. So this is the third video, and actually kind of the not so secret is basically because I was away at a meditation retreat over the weekend or a meditation event. I didn't produce any stuff. So this is my third video on the third day. So but at the end of 30 days, there will be 30 videos. I absolutely, definitely promise you without a shadow of a doubt. So today's video is coming from Armando Cruz. And he said, why do we make, so today's video isn't coming from Armando Cruz. Today's video is coming from me, but the question is coming from Armando Cruz. Why do we make everything so complicated? So Armando was looking at one of the other threads. We were engaged in a conversation, but you asked a great question. Why do we? And obviously as coaches, this is a really important concept to grasp and to understand and to gain clarity around for ourselves, right? Why do we make so many things so complicated? Maybe you found this, in observation of your clients. Maybe it's an area of frustration or big challenge for you, or maybe it's in your own life or in your family or your relationship. You see that things just seem to get really complicated, really complex. Why do we do that? Because the reality is most things are fairly simple when you think about it. This kind of tendency to make things pretty complex. So I come at this from, there's a bit of personal supposition here, and there's a little bit of aspects of neuroscience, and it all ties together. And certainly it's been my experience and observation that people can have a much simpler life if they are aware of what is making it complex. So I love this question. So what is making things complex for people? Well, ultimately, when you boil it down, the brain is, when you get rid of all the nuts and bolts and inner workings and all the brain zones, when you boil it down, what the brain is more than anything else is a pattern recognition machine. It's simply seeking patterns. Okay, so there's a pattern for what normal air smells and tastes like, and what normal water tastes like, and that's why you're sitting here and suddenly, can you smell gas? Right? It's broken the pattern. The normal pattern for what a room should smell like when it's all safe is essentially broken, right? So the brain is a pattern recognition machine, which is great because it's basically what it means is that it's always seeking data, always seeking to enhance the pattern to gather more and more pieces of information, so that you don't always have to cognitively think your way through the challenges that you face in life and the situations. You just end up doing it, right? Because the brain is, once it learns the pattern and it takes it in, it says, okay, I've got that, and now it adds a new piece of information, a new piece of information, a new piece of information, and the pattern gets richer and richer and richer. And by pattern, what we're really saying is that the brain uses the patterns, right? The patterns it recognizes to create predictions, and it uses these predictions to create probabilities, and it uses these probabilities to ask and answer the question, okay, am I safe? Given what's happening right now, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? The brain's basically default question that it plays over and over again is, am I safe? Is the air safe? Is the water that I'm drinking safe? Is the conversation I'm having with this person safe? Is it am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Fantastic, right? If it says yes, I'm safe, it goes on to other thoughts, and we think bigger and higher thoughts. But interestingly enough, it tends to use the same pattern. So when it comes across a new experience, or even an experience that it's had before, the brain is hungry for new data, right? So it's continuously seeking out data. But the trouble is, the brain has a tendency to seek out data very often beyond practical usefulness. Now, we could argue that all new data is great, and it is. If something that you can exercise right now, if I learn something new about something and I say, right, because I've learned that, I can go and do this, that is really useful. But if we let the brain run away from us, the brain has a tendency to keep saying, bring me more data, bring me more data, bring me more data. And you've got to understand this, the brain is never quite satisfied with the amount of data it's got, because that's not its job. Is because essentially, if you want to get into a more metaphysical kind of transcendental kind of ways of thinking, the human spirit and the human mind is essentially limitless. It's why we can dream things that don't exist yet. It's without limits. But so how do those things that don't exist yet somehow in the future come into existence? Because the brain keeps seeking data, and as it seeks the data, it combines the process is called neuroassociation. It connects dots, it joins bridges, and it says, right, now I've got enough data, we can do this thing. Well, that's great. If you're in a real creative place and it's working for you, it's useful. The trouble is, there's a tendency, if we're not very aware and if we're not very intentional, we're not very mindful about the data we're collecting, to always think that we haven't got enough. And to always, we just sit down, I feel really great, like everything, I'm so clear about so much. And then somebody writes a blog post or somebody posts something on Facebook or a new book comes out and you just start reading it and you go, oh, they're doing it so differently to me. Well, shit, maybe I should throw away all my plans and go with this one now. And now all that certainty, all that prediction and response that the brain craves, in fact, that the brain must operate on, has just been thrown out. And we're now in another place where the brain goes, damn, there was certainty a second ago, and now there's no more certainty. I'm full of doubt again. Okay, collect data. So you can see how this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Kind of the brain seeks data. Once it's got the data, it's usually saying, well, okay, so that's not useful to what I knew before, so maybe I should keep looking, or maybe I should go to another expert and read another book, go on another course. Probably sounds really familiar, right? That is just how the brain is designed, and that is how the brain is always going to work. It's always going to seek new data. So we have to be very mindful about what we do with data once it comes in. And we have to be very mindful about which pieces of data we've got that we're already happy with. So no, I'm good up to this point, and here is something I'm a little bit uncertain of. So let me look at the next thing. And being very, very clear that your intention is not to throw away the baby with the bathwater, but to enhance the prediction and the probability that you already have about something. So can you already see the difference here in the way most people, we learn something and we immediately throw everything else away. And that just leaves the brain in, kind of, to use a very technical term, it leaves the brain in a shit state, right? It's like, oh my God, I had so much certainty, now the certainty's all gone, I'm just full of doubt. The only way to cure doubt is for me to go and get more data. And so you'll spend all your time out there in data land, right? Trouble is, you never could collect enough data, right? You could never collect enough data to be truly 100% certain about anything. And yet, we're seeking the absolute certainty. In other words, we're seeking perfection, right? This idea, this mythological being that kind of you can get 100% certainty about something, and then once I get that level of certainty, then I'm ready to start, right? Until I get that level of certainty, I'm not feeling good about this. What the brain, when you really kind of boil it down, what the brain is really, really good at is probability. It's really poor at certainty. It's great at probability, it's poor at certainty. So if the brain is great at probability, why not work to just kind of look at what is the most probable outcome if I do these things right now? Great, I'll start from there and I'll add something. Right? So we'll talk about it in a second. Keep that in mind, though, that the brain is a pattern recognition machine. It uses the patterns to create predictions. It uses the predictions to create probabilities, right? And probabilities and possibilities. And from there, it only goes off course, really, when we get so hyper-focused on trying to look for the new certainty, or when we gather so much data that it doesn't connect to what we already knew about something or what we already believed about something. We can also kind of make things complicated because we fear judgment just in case we're wrong, right? What if we put all our money on that horse and it doesn't come in? What's everyone else going to think about us, right? And that metaphorical horse, right? Because it could just be, as I invested all my time, effort, energy in that business idea or in that relationship, and what are people going to think about me when it doesn't? When my probability doesn't pan out? In other words, when I put so much certainty on it, it didn't work out, what are people going to think about me? And so, of course, what we do, or what the brain does, it sends us back out into our environment. It says, okay, go and seek more data from other people, right? And borrow some of their data and bring that back to you. And kind of, now that you've got their data, add it to your data and kind of see. And you can see it puts us back into that same data spiral. It's like a data tornado whizzing around us, and we can't see and we can't move and we feel unsafe, right? So the main thing that I think protects us from this, and the main thing that kind of keeps us moving in the right direction, like we're data seeking machines. The brain is always going to look for it. But the thing that protects us is to focus on our intent rather than our content. Focus on what we are trying to accomplish versus what we have to do and what needs to be the right way and what everyone else is saying. Like, what am I trying to accomplish? Right? What is my intent? And the biggest part of that intent is, how do I want to feel while I'm going through this, right? So if I'm trying to accomplish building a 6-figure business, but I want to feel awesome, I want to feel free, I want to feel like I'm contributing, I want to feel like I'm making a difference, my intention is to make a difference, to feel free to, right? It's not to say I've got to focus on building the six-figure business. Now, that doesn't mean that as I'm going through that process, I can't measure my intention against the outcome, right? But there's more than one outcome that I can focus on. Focus on the intent and let the intent drive your content, whether that be written content, verbal content, kind of the physical content of your life, like what you're actually doing. Let the intent drive that. Next, if you want to protect yourself from data, start with things that you have a high degree of probability around, right? Things that you have a high degree of probability around, and then add one new unknown element. Like, so let's say you're trying to build a six-figure business. Someone comes along and they say, "Oh, stop doing that and 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 that," right? And you go, "Well, do you know what? Like, I was already only 30, 40 grand a year doing those things, and okay, I'm willing to kind of take on board this new idea, but maybe I'll just change one thing," because that's the nature of an experiment. The true nature of an experiment is to, if we suddenly change everything, well, it's not truly an experiment. Like, if something changes, we don't know what was the cause of that change. So change a single thing. In my coaching and in the mind map course that I teach, I talk to coaches about starting with easy plus one. Easy plus one. Start with what is easy for you and add one new thing. Right? So now you've got all this probability behind you, all of the known, all the prediction is here. You go, I already know what that kind of looks like in my life, but here's this one new unknown element, and let me bring that. That's a great counter to complication, right? Easy plus one. The next thing, start with your values and your intent and decide what is important to you and what's not. Right? So before you head out seeking out for advice from other people, like if you want a protection from the judgment side of things, well, don't go out and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think I should do?" Tell people, say, "Look, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm willing to change. Here's what I'm not willing to change. Here's my intent. Here's why these things are important to me, and I'm not deviating from these at the moment, but I'm looking for some help with this." Right? As opposed to, "What do you think about this, and what do you think I should be doing?" Right? It's a much more complex situation, particularly if you're... Now, I'm not saying that's never the right thing to do. Sometimes you might be really open and you're feeling really good and it's not overwhelming. But if you're already kind of feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and burned out by and feeling that things are too complicated, then going and asking another person to basically throw away your baby with the bathwater and give me some new bathwater and a new baby is not the best plan. So start with your values, your intent, and decide what is and isn't important to you about the advice that you're seeking from others. Next, I already said it, but treat everything like an experiment. Don't get caught up on what has to come out of it, right? Be clear what your intent is. So the intent of doing this is that I would make 2,000 sales, or I would fill a retreat with 15 people, or I would do this, or I would do that, right? Be clear what your intent around the thing is. But be aware that this is always an experiment, and you may have wanted to fill this retreat with 15 people, and only 3 people sign up. Well, as you're going along, you can say, well, what have I been doing up to this point that created the 3 people to sign up? But what new piece of advice do I need? Like, I'm aware that people signed up off the back of my YouTube videos, but that nobody has come to me off of Facebook, and nobody has come to me. Well, so do I now want to ramp up the amount of YouTube videos I'm doing and create more invitations there, or do I want to ask someone for a bit of advice around what the right way to write an email might be? It's just an example, right? Kind of, you can use this any way you see fit, but be very, very clear that this is all an experiment. And the great thing about an experiment is it releases you from the moral and the kind of the good and bad and everything else, and it moves you back into this more Buddhist concept that I just happen to love, right? And I've said it in several previous videos and posts. It just, is this skillful? Is it skillful? Given what I intended to happen, did I see that thing happen? Is it skillful? And you can grade yourself. So, well, a bit of what I wanted to see happen. Like, it wasn't a complete write-off, right? The experiment didn't completely crash into the dust. 3 people signed up, but I was looking for 15. So kind of, it was 3 out of 15 skillful. What other things might I need to change here? What new thing might I bring in? What might I be ready to discard? Was it skillful? Did it bring about the result that you want to bring about? And here's the thing: complication. The basic answer to complication is basically nearly always no. It wasn't skillful. I had too many moving parts, too many thoughts, too many ideas, too many storylines running at once, too many things to do. I was overwhelmed, I was burned out, I was trying to convince, as it gets complex, skill goes down, right? So start with the lowest levels of kind of change and adaptation, right? The lowest levels of new prediction. Start with a great deal of probability based upon current experience, and then add the uncertainty in you treat the uncertainty simply as an experiment. Okay, but again, in answer to the question, why do we make everything so complicated? Because that's the way the brain was designed. But the brain was also designed for you to be mindful about things. It's just when you're not mindful, things get complicated, because you instead of relying upon the probabilities that you've already spent a lifetime developing, you venture out into data that you're uncertain about, and you're hoping to make predictions based upon more and more and more and more and more data. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that that resonated with you. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear kind of, did that hit the spot? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? I don't really care. I don't mean that in a conceitful way. This is a discussion. I've partly given you my opinion, and I've partly given you some of the neuroscience behind why this happens. I don't mind whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it. I just want to engage in a great conversation with you. So what are your thoughts? What came to mind as I was yammering on there? Look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.